And good evening and welcome to the Ladies' Room here on your True Nation station, 90.1 FM. First and foremost, we say thank you to the Get True Boys for the last 4 hours of radio. And we do hope that you enjoyed your emancipation holiday. So to all of you on the dial, 90.1 FM, and those of you on the World Wide Web, www.wackradio901fm.com, and of course our shout box always there with us, and those of you on Zeno Radio, etc. The Aaron is under the weather today, so we do wish him a speedy recovery and hope that he's back with us next week. But in the meantime, we have Mr. T. Welcome to the Ladies' Room.
Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. Good evening to the entire world, blazing WAC 901 FM. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be in the Ladies' Room.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. 3 ladies in front of me.
Oh, that's why we call it the Ladies' Room. No, you missed out a word. He missed out a keyword. 3 beautiful ladies.
I going on that road. You see, you looking at beautiful.
No, you need to say that. Beautiful and intelligent.
No, I looking at elegant.
Oh my, yes, you're saying that too.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
So, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, today's program is one that we must do, something that we tend to, sweep under the carpet and shy away from, but nonetheless it affects us, and probably more than we even know, and we are about to find out just how much it affects us this evening. We'd like to welcome back to the Ladies' Room Kelly Farlane, and she's a clinical psychologist and an organizational psychologist as well. So she deals with moods and anxiety and family conflict, and on the organizational side, performance management and coaching, leadership development and conflict resolution. Also with us is Casswina Donald, and she is a cognitive neuroscientist and a psychiatric researcher. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are talking this evening suicide, something that we have never done actually in the Ladies' Room. We might have spoken around it, but never head on. And just to let you know that for the first probably half hour or so, we'd like to get as much information out as possible, and we'll open the lines shortly in the vicinity of about 7:30, and we'll remind you of the numbers a little bit later. Okay, so here we go. So ladies, we're talking suicide, and I think if not 100% of people listening know what we're talking about, which of course, and if you want to give us the scientific definition.
Well, suicide is the ending of one's own life.
Willfully and intentionally.
Willfully and correct. That's very important to add. Willfully and intentionally.
All right. Now, my big question, and I want to hit it hard, and then we'll go back to the soft side. What are the statistics like in Trinidad and Tobago?
In Trinidad and Tobago. Well, Trinidad and Tobago has the 3rd highest suicide rating in the Caribbean. That is about 13 per every 100,000 people die of suicide a year in Trinidad and Tobago. We rank number 40 in the world, in all the countries in the world, like 183 or so countries. We are number 40, little us, So, and what's also relevant is that suicide has a ripple effect that affects the person who has died, the people that they leave behind. It affects communities, because one of the risk factors for ending one's life is being exposed or experiencing someone that they know who have ended their own life, right? And so for every one completed suicide, we have at least 20 to 25 attempted suicides.
Wow.
So if we have 13 per 100,000 people dying of suicide a year, we have even more, 20 times that, actually making suicide attempts.
Wow.
Right? So that points to, it points to a large issue, because suicides don't just occur. Suicides are linked, at least 90% of suicides are linked to some sort of mental health problem.
Right.
And to add to what Kelly said, on average, over the past 5 years, 100 suicides occur in Trinidad per year. In Trinidad and Tobago per year. And of those, 90% occur in Trinidad, 10% in Tobago. And the majority occur in the South Central region. So that's what we're here to talk about today, the initiative, Suicide Prevention Initiative, that we have in undertaking in Shagonas.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about it, because I'm seeing you're both part of a larger group spearheading a community engagement suicide prevention project. You know, so tell us a little bit, and then we'll come back into the nitty-gritties of it. So tell us about the project and why. Again, well, I can't ask why, because you just broke that down. 90% of that is in South and Central.
Yes, why should go on us? Okay, so the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, they piloted a project to reduce or prevent suicide, and they piloted it in Canada. They wanted to try it, or to also bring it to the Caribbean. So Professor Gerald Hutchinson, from the psychiatry department at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, is who they communicated with to spearhead the project, and Casswina and myself work with him for this. So he had to choose a community, and he chose Shagonas because, again, most of the, at least 30% of the suicides that occur in Trinidad and Tobago occur in Shagonas. Sorry, that occur in Trinidad occur in Shagonas, right? So the PAHO has made a community engagement toolkit, and the idea is that in order to make a good impact on the rate of suicide, we must engage communities. Communities have lots of resources in terms of people, intellectual resources, the business communities, and in communities, financial resources. And so the aim is to get people feeling empowered to help themselves. So we're not just continually sort of depending on the government to do something about what the World Health Organization considers a crisis, right?
Yes.
A public health crisis, suicide and depression, public health crisis. So we engaged the community. We contacted stakeholders in the community of Shagonas, had a couple meetings, and what we do when we engage the community is to find out from them on the ground, what does suicide look like in your community? Who is engaging in suicidal behaviors? How many are happening?
What are the perceptions surrounding suicide?
Very important.
What does stigma look like? And remember, as Kelly said, the community engagement toolkit was started in Canada.
Yes.
So we can't come into a new community and use that exact model.
No.
We would have to modify it for our region, our city, our village.
Exactly.
So that's why we needed the input of the community itself. So we have done that, and as Kelly said, we went into the community, we engaged the stakeholders, so that would be the religious leaders, the business community, the mental health services in the community, the schools, guidance officers, social workers, and we've been having we've had a couple meetings, and thus far we've had tremendous support.
Wonderful.
The mayor's office has offered us limitless support.
Borough Council,
The Borough Council.
councillors from local government are all on board, and other NGOs are very much on board, and they attend the meetings. And so the idea is that in a community, different interventions would work because different things would interest people in a community. Even though we know our Trinidad culture, first of all, our Trinidad culture, as Cassie said, is different from the Canadian culture, so we can't just one size fits all.
Exactly, and even within Trinidad,
We have
different areas would have specific different cultures.
Exactly.
and even within communities, different parts. Felicity has a different culture from Monroe.
So you have your work cut out for you.
There you go. So we have to get the communities on board to tell us, okay, this will work in these places, and that's why we take this approach.
Okay. Now, given the statistics you just gave us there, is it broken down into age groups by chance? And I would lead into this a little bit later on.
Well, the first thing we need to know is that suicide is often underreported. So for every one suicide that occurs, we may have 10 people who've done it, who have suicided, and it has not been reported for various reasons.
Can I hold you there? Because that's what I wanted to find out. Something of this nature, how could it not be reported? Is it that it's passed off as something else?
Can be, and even sometimes for insurance reasons. if the person has suicided, the insurance,
Yes,
it may not pay off.
Yeah, it
Sometimes
doesn't.
too, due to fear for stigma. For instance, if someone ingests a substance, a poisonous substance, the family may ask, can we put on the death certificate that the cause of death is, a problem with the lungs or a problem with the liver, like whatever
Exactly.
part. So these things have happened again, and as well. And we are in a small society, so sometimes because it's not a lie, it's just kind of leaving out the first part of the truth, right?
they-
The liver
They
was
intentionally ingested.
right, and
Wow.
that a substance created the issue, but the problem was the liver. So we have these kinds of things happening. Yes.
Wow. Because then these figures here, then, if it's already a crisis
Yeah.
and it's not the accurate figures, it just
Yeah.
leads us. But Casswina, back to you were giving us a bit of information in regards to my question in terms of age.
Right. So there are some vulnerable populations. So that would include school children, adolescents, and surprisingly now even the elderly,
Right.
people over 60. That age group is on the rise for suicide.
And that's why I asked, because of this particular age group. Now, to me, suicide is something that people tend to shy away from. It's never really a topic that comes up in the barbershops, as we say, or anywhere. We'll speak of so many other things. And I know the point, I get the point in terms of the stigma and all of that. But yet, through all of this, you all have decided, listen, we need to do something, we need to make people aware. Now, your project in Shogunus, right now you said you're dealing with the stakeholders. Is it that eventually you want to go out to families, or is it that you're just dealing with the stakeholders so that they know how to treat with it?
So the objective of the project is for communities to empower themselves.
Okay.
Because oftentimes in communities we feel powerless, like we can't do anything to address a problem. So our role, Kelly's role and my role, is to empower the community to empower itself. So we have been working with them, and we are working with the stakeholders, but we have identified specific action points. We have created a mind map of the vulnerable communities. We've taken two approaches: directly addressing the vulnerable communities and also preventative methods. So for example, we have the media involved, so we intend to circulate posters in major business areas. We're going to have a column in specific newspapers. We have engaged religious leaders, so we would like, but the community itself.
Yes.
So specific people will be engaging with religious leaders to go in and speak to their congregation to increase awareness and sensitization. What else, Kelly?
Well, yes. So, and we're actually still in the development stage of the action plans. But I know we have spoken about ways that we can reach children by going to PTA meetings and giving information. I think the major focus right now is information gathering, because one of the biggest sort of complaints that came out of this project so far is that people simply don't know, first of all, where to go for help, but also someone might be feeling down, and there are people who don't realize that, okay, these are the symptoms of a mental health problem that can be cured, and there is help for suicide, and that we don't just say, yeah, nothing to be so depressed and want to kill himself over. Let's ignore that, right? So these sorts of messages we need to get out there to first change the way we think about suicide and the way we think about mental health, and then we can really get something going.
Okay, so thank you for segueing into my question now, which is, the to bring out the psychologists in you now and ask the question of, how do you tell the difference? I mean, we are human beings and we have our down days, we have our blues, and sometimes you tell us, girl, I'm feeling so depressed today. And I think when we did this segment, our first segment together with Mr. Bakary here, we clearly defined that, listen, okay, yes, we are humans, we go through the blues, but if it goes beyond a particular period of time, then that's a red flag. In my time here in the ladies' room, I've also learned that, and I'm not sure if it's totally accurate, but that research has shown that, someone who is suicidal in thought,
Yes.
they always try to reach out to someone. There's always someone that they reach out to. Most of the time they tend to be ignored. What are some of the telltale signs? What are some of the the signs that we look for to know, listen, you know what, I need to do something, I need to step in, get some help, whether I force that person to help or not? What do we look for?
Well, first of all, you look at if you notice a dramatic change in their mood, right? Whether it's that they have suddenly become very down, or if they were very depressed and down and they've suddenly become very happy. That's also a red flag, because a lot of times when someone has made the decision to end their lives, they feel relieved. So now I'm happy, I'm reaching out to everybody, which brings me to the next point. If someone kind of is just reaching out to everybody to say goodbye, not in a direct way, but they're saying their goodbyes and probably telling you, I really appreciate you for this and that, and all of a sudden, then also if you see just changes in their behaviors, they've been making arrangements for someone to take care of elderly people that in their care, or children in their care, or pets in their care. These are unable to sleep or sleeping all the time. If they're saying things like life isn't worth living anymore, or everything will be okay soon, don't worry, or I really don't want to be here anymore. People say these things, and we just kind of, as you said just now, brush it off. We can't brush it off, so those are some of these sort of telltale signs.
All right, and let's break it further. Children.
Yes.
Because I think it may be a little bit more difficult to see those drastic signs in children. What do we look for?
But we do see signs in children. You see, again, suicide doesn't just occur. There's at least a stressor, a major stressor, and it comes back to coping. Children, we know, children learn how to cope from us, from parents and the older people in their lives. And so it's just a matter of paying attention to changes in the child's behavior. A lot of times when teenagers start locking themselves away, we say, oh, that's teenagers, everybody annoying to them. But we still have to talk. We should still make efforts to talk to children, to teenagers, who, so you still look for change. Again, sleeping a lot, not sleeping. How are they reacting socially? Are they suddenly not communicating with friends anymore? That is also a big telltale sign in terms of children. Also, if a child suddenly, their schoolwork suddenly starts suffering, a lot of times that's an indication that something is going on with them psychologically, right? And so all of these are these are red flags, but they don't each individually mean for sure, I see this person is suicidal. It doesn't necessarily mean that for certain, but they are red flags. And like the last time I was here, I was saying, we never be afraid to ask. A lot of people think that if you ask someone if they're interested, if they want to end their lives, it would encourage them to. Research shows that it does not encourage them to. But we have to be sensitive.
Does it deter it anyway?
Well, it could stop it in the sense that once you get somebody to open up and talk to you, a lot of times if someone is suicidal, they might tell you. Most of the times they will tell you. They will say yes. The way you handle it is what would deter. So we don't minimize somebody's problems. But you have to or try to guilt them out of it. The best thing to do is to support them, to really listen and hear them out, encourage them to get help, maybe even take them to get help them figure a plan out. But just trying to tell them you have such a bright future, that is nothing. That is going in one ear and out the other, and it might just make them end up making them feel worse, actually, if you just make them guilty.
I really have to bring that point that you just made there, which is so crucial to the fact that what might be minute to us may be the biggest problem or the biggest thing in someone else's life. So as you rightfully said, never diminish or decrease the importance of something that someone else is going through, and that's a key point. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum and speak about the elderly now. And what are some of the signs for them, and why
why elderly people?
Yes, because I know that's increasing, as you said. It's kind of trending, and the question would be, but it may not be as simple as we may think it is. So I want to ask you all as the professionals, why are we seeing this trend?
A lot of people get their identity from their work.
Mm-hmm.
So now when you are not employed, you've reached retirement age, it's almost a blow to your identity. Who are you? Do I have meaning and purpose in my life now? And that coupled with other things. So for example, you're getting older, you may have existential issues, you're approaching death, you're seeing all your friends and your family die. So all those things coupled together may be the impetus.
Physical illness as well.
Exactly.
And pain, and chronic illnesses and chronic pain is a risk factor for suicide. And of course, again, mental health problems, depression, anxiety, existential stuff. Those are some of the risk factors for why elderly people. And financial issues. Now, one of the things, just anecdotally, that when we were in Chaguanas and we saw that the highest age group for suicide was men in their 60s, we just linked it to the recession sort of thing. So so financial issues, because the people in the community kind of brought that up. That one, losing a spouse, and also two, just not being able to support yourself and your family as you did before because of financial problems, feeling worthless, feeling hopeless.
Wow. And you hit that age there, which really is retirement age. And then just to take it into one of your areas of expertise now, which is organizational psychology, something I've often heard through the HR departments in different organizations, but I don't think it's really done at the level it's supposed to be done, is you need to prepare people for retirement. And I do not see it really happening in organizations. It really is a life-changing experience. You move from a place of, as you said, of feeling important, you have purpose, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And it really, what I have noticed over the years is heading towards, there's this anxiety. Oh, I can't wait today. I'm working how many years? I can't wait. And then boom, it happens to you. And that's something we keep pushing. You need to prepare people and start preparing them at least 5+ years before retirement. I know people that have retired and gone into total depression and crying for months. And then started coming around, and as you rightfully said, those few months of total depression is when those suicidal thoughts may enter. And then, as you rightfully said, sometimes loneliness as well. You're accustomed interacting with people. The children may have gone off. The spouse may have passed away. And, what really can we do now as a society? What can we do as a society? Because sometimes the family may overlook it. Here I am, and I'm on the outside looking in. What am I supposed to do? Most often we may tend to turn a blind eye. Are there numbers that we can call, to alert someone?
Well, go ahead.
Well, we always say that the role of society is to have the most vulnerable in our population. So, as an individual, yes, you can support your friends or your family if you see them going through it. There are hotlines that you can call. There are mental health clinics within each district. We have a list that we can leave with you. The help is there, but I think one of the major problems that we have in Trinidad and in our communities is stigma. People are ashamed to be seen, I have a mental health problem, but it's just as if you have a kidney problem. There ideally should be no stigma attached to that. If you have diabetes, if you have a liver problem, you would go and seek help. Same thing with your brain. If you're having difficulties, there should be absolutely no shame in seeking help. So stigma is one problem, one issue. And the other issue is people don't know where to seek help. So those are the two major issues, we think.
And we will definitely put some numbers and information out there.
What we must look at, what's important to say also, is early intervention. When you notice something has changed, we need to be able to open conversation and ask, what's going on, what's happening, So social support system is very important. So all of this is part of the community engagement initiative, because these things are all part of that.
Okay. Well, just to let our listeners know that our lines are now open, and 6524901 on the local side, And we'll give the international out in a short. Let's take our first call. Good evening. You're live in the ladies' room.
Good night.
Hi, welcome.
Yes. This mental illness, you come in a little village and you get a nervous breakdown. Everybody in that village, when you walk in the street, look a madman. He mad. He was in Ward 1. He spent time in Ward 1 over 10 times. And that's taking, you can't walk the street, people, but you know, they're a mad family. You understand?
Yes.
So that is kind of thing people have to undergo. You all speaking from experience and books, but to live the reality of life in an area is too different. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, caller.
So the way that so that is an issue, and we talk about that every time. Stigma. The way we have to change the way that we as a society look at mental health problems. So we have been making efforts to do that. We've been doing videos about mental health problems, and now we are going into the communities to try to sensitize people to mental health problems. So when we see things, we first of all we understand what is happening. We don't just look at somebody and judge them. You understand? We know that they are experiencing an illness just like the person who has any other physical illness. Right? And that is a major issue in this society. People don't get help because of that, and then you end up on the street and all of this sort of stuff, because these things, as he called the madman, he's probably talking about psychotic symptoms, or in the street kind of saying things that people don't understand and that seem not to make sense and so on. You don't wake up one day like that. We feel these symptoms. Our families may notice things, or we may have a very traumatic experience, or our stress levels might have risen dramatically for some reason, and that might have triggered, some psychiatric symptoms, and we sit and we hope it goes away. We hope it disappears, and it doesn't. Most of the times it wouldn't if it is genuinely a mental illness. And because we don't get help, that is when or we take drugs or we take alcohol to deal with it, then we end up on the street, as the caller said, as the madman. You understand? And then people talking about your family and so on. But apart from how we end up on the street, we really as a society need to have more care for people who exhibit mental health problems, because I'm not spiting you, I'm not doing you something to be ill. I am ill.
Yes.
It's just that's just it,
Okay.
And it's basically a brain-based illness.
Yeah.
And I think it's so scary for a lot of people, because the brain controls your behavior and your perceptions. So if something appears to be dysfunctional in the brain, it would affect your behavior, and somehow that is linked to your identity, who you are. You are not who you are, and that kind of scares people. But it really is a physical illness as well. It's a brain-based illness, mental illness.
Thank you. Let's talk attempted suicide, because the figures you gave would have been suicide. Now, I don't know if there are any statistics with regards to that, but definitely I'm sure it occurs. So let's talk a little bit about that. So someone attempts suicide. What does the research show, as far as you're aware, in terms of that person attempting numerous times?
Yeah. Well, if you attempted once, you're more likely to attempt again. So one way to assess whether somebody is at a very high risk, one way, not the only way, but at a very high risk for suicide, is that they have had previous attempts. This is somebody who means serious business. They're not afraid to try it. And like I stated earlier, the World Health Organization says that for every one completed suicide, there are 20 attempted suicides.
And females attempt more, but males complete. Because if they would be engaging in more rigorous practices to end their lives, and women may not, it may not be that rigorous. So women attempt more, men complete more.
How deep does the research go? Does it go as deep as into, what is the methods and things like that? How far do you all really need to drill down in order to provide help?
Exactly. So looking at the methods as well is a barrier, can provide a barrier to someone attempting suicide.
the methods that came out of the statistics for Trinidad is mostly death by hanging. Some years ago, it was poisoning. So hanging and poisoning are higher,
yes.
but hanging is higher now than before. And I think it's because there are laws now, and that is one of the things for preventing suicide in the community, making access to means for suicide a little bit more difficult. I know in Trinidad, there are laws now regarding the purchasing of gram zone and so on. I think you have to have a license as an agriculture or something to get it. So it's not as easily gotten anymore. But there's so hanging and poison is are the top ones, but there's also setting oneself on fire, jumping off of buildings.
But in Trinidad, definitely hanging and by ingesting poison. Those are the two main methods.
All right, and when we go now into murder-suicide, what makes that difference there now? Because then we're not talking about someone who's taking their own life only, but they see it fit to also take someone else's, you know, and I mean as a clinical psychologist and a neuroscientist, what does that say? What does that mean?
Well, murder-suicide is usually linked to domestic violence. So usually women in that relationship will be battered by their partners. We call it intimate partner violence. And usually when a murder-suicide occurs, it is an outgrowth of domestic violence.
Which in itself has its own, red flags of some sort of mental health problem, some sort of childhood trauma or something else that makes you think that you need to abuse your partner, whether male or female.
Yes. Wow. Let's talk a little bit now about the families of these persons. You know, the families that are left behind, and you know, what do they struggle with? What are their struggles apart from just the stigma and all of that? Let's talk about that.
Why? A lot of time, I mean, if the person hasn't left a note or so on, why? A lot of guilt. Why didn't I notice? Why didn't I recognize? Why didn't I do something more? Why didn't I ask? Why did I disregard their cries for help? Now seeing, oh, that must have meant that, and that must have meant that. That kind of guilt, you know, follows you for a very long time and brings on its own depression. And then also research shows that people who suicide is linked to family history of suicide. So if you have family members who have suicided, you are more likely to suicide yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. So what it is, and it's not necessarily genetic. What it is that it becomes an option because you've experienced that as a way of coping with stress, a way of escaping stress and whatever it is.
And see it as an acceptable form of
correct
or way out.
Yes.
So when this occurs, you know, is there, I can't say by law, but the main practice coming out of whether through the hospital, the police, etc., do they immediately go into families and provide that support, or is it that the family has to reach out for some sort of help?
Mostly the family. From what we've learned, especially from this project, mostly the family has to reach out. You would get probably maybe victim support unit, I believe, would in the initial stages, but if you need, which I would say you probably do, but if you need further assistance, you have to seek that out yourself. So there's no real follow-up, and that is one of the things that we also want to look at with the suicide initiative that we are engaged in. Follow-up for families who have experienced death by someone dying by suicide. So that is a major problem.
You know, I'm listening to you all, and then, you know, again, this is what really awareness is about. And, you know, the purpose of awareness. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know, they need to go to every school, they need to go to every organization. They really need to talk to people, they really need to talk to everyone, you know.
So we have that on the drawing board. We piloted the project in Chaguanas, but we do have plans to take it nationwide.
Now, this may be a really far off question, and I don't know if you may be able to answer, but has your research really narrowed in on why South Central, as opposed to other parts of the country, has the highest rate? Were you able to narrow in at all on that? So it just, boom, that's how it happens. I saw the eyes. Casswina knows it. She knows it, but she can't say it.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are from the data, there are indicators, but not, we can't really.
What we can say is that we've seen that reports on the ground, a lot of people attempt because of relationship problems, difficulty with work, difficulty, in adolescence, possibly their parents. They're living with their parents, and the parents may have traditional values, and they're living in the modern world. So that tension between the old world and their world, parents not understanding.
So that generational gap thing never leaves us.
Yeah,
Wow.
but usually relationship problems, financial difficulties. And it's interesting to note that a society could really impact how an individual behaves. And, we're in an economic crisis,
Yes.
and a lot of people lost their jobs, and that would have added to the stress.
And when we look at
Would have-
children, the bullying and all of these
Yes.
things, peer pressure. And I think it was most recently, and I can only draw, the most recent case I could think of was the 8-year-old boy. And it was simply because, the kids in school were being mean to him, so to speak. And of course, we're talking bullying. And that's another topic that we need to do as a full topic here in the ladies' room as well. In case you just joined us, our guests this evening, Kelly McFarlane and Casswina Donald, and we are talking suicide. Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Check out The Ladies' Room every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on the True Nation Station 90.1 FM. Great talk, great topics, great interviews for the whole family with your host Marsha. So make sure and tune in Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. only on 90.1 FM.
This is for my sisters. No, my sister girls.
Check out The Ladies' Room every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on the True Nation Station 90.1 FM. Great talk, great topics, great interviews for the whole family with your host Marsha. So make sure and tune in Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. only on 90.1 FM.
Good evening and welcome back to the Ladies' Room. Our topic this evening, suicide. Good evening, you're live in the Ladies' Room. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
I have two questions for you all.
Yes.
Would you call somebody who commits suicide weak or very strong-willed?
Okay, and second question.
The second question is, is it slanted to any one race in Trinidad with the rate of suicides?
Okay.
You don't have to name the race, but just, I don't want to know if it's slanted.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the first question, would you describe someone who commits suicide as weak or strong-willed?
I wouldn't comment on their, first of all, not necessarily weak. Now, from a clinical standpoint, I wouldn't comment on whether they're weak or strong unless I work with them. But even so,
You don't want to give credit to something like that.
Yeah, it's linked to a struggle, a mental health problem, and to feeling like this is the only way out. I have no other options for whatever reason. That is the thought that they have. It doesn't say, certainly doesn't say that they are weak. certain, and I think whether you consider that as meaning that someone is strong is kind of a personal judgment call.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of the places and ways by which people can get help.
Well, we have mental health clinics across the country. Barataria, Mount Hope has in Chaguanas, there's Anchor Villa. Of course, there's private practice. If you can see a psychologist in private practice.
All right. Now, not to stray from the topic of suicide, but I know it's always a question people have as well, especially when they're searching for help. Because when in your field, you will hear, okay, this person is a counselor, this person is a psychologist, this person is a psychiatrist, and now we also have a neuroscientist sitting in the room. And if you could just take a minute and just, walk us through each one, and, is it that the areas of specialty is different? Who does one really go to? Because there are those that will say, okay, well, I'll go and talk to a counselor at work, or, versus, you need a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Well, okay, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, first of all, who specialized in psychiatric medicine, right? So they deal with problems of the brain, problems of mental illness. Psychiatrists could prescribe medication because they are medical doctors. They don't always do psychotherapy. Some of them do. So if you find a psychiatrist who does psychotherapy, fine, right? They would prescribe your medication and they would give you your psychotherapy. Psychologists do psychotherapy. So we diagnose and we treat mental health problems using either cognitive behavioral therapy, existential therapy, psychoanalysis, hypnosis, all of these things, right? Psychologists, that's what we focus on. The only difference between us and the psychiatrists is that we're not medical doctors, so we don't prescribe medication. Counselors, now counseling and clinical psychology are a bit different. Clinical psychology was developed in the 18th century to help to fill in for psychiatrists. When there was, I think, World War II? I can't remember. One of the world wars, right? And they started realizing that therapy or counseling or talking, this thing called talk therapy before it was developed, was helping people somehow get over what they call shell shock, what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. And so they trained people to do that, and that was clinical psychology. They did everything the psychiatrists did except the medication, because the psychiatrists were needed to do the medical work. Counseling was a bit different in that the mode of the sort of the interaction, the kind of slightly different guidelines in the way that we treat mental health problems. So that was counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist. Neuroscience has to do with the way that the brain, right, is affected by the environment and the way that the environment affects the brain, right? And in terms of the connections that are formed, and I'm going to back off now. And
so you do the research, not necessarily, Casswina, that people come to you.
So neuroscientists would not be seeing patients.
Right.
They would actually do the research that would inform the
figure
practice
out why whatever is happening is happening.
Exactly, at the brain level.
And it's very, very important to have the collaboration between psychiatry, psychology, and neuroscience because of the three focus.
Well, I'm
points.
seeing it there. I am seeing the connection right there. You see your psychologist, and your psychologist now, based on whatever issues they will see, will then say, okay, we need to take this a little bit further. Because I guess, as you said, the cognitive and what of that treatment and all of these things, okay, there's a little bit more here, so let me refer you to psychiatrist. The psychiatrist now, in treating with medication, etc., may want further research, etc., and that's where Casswina comes in.
And some of the most the most effective treatments is the combination of let's say CBT or some sort of psychotherapy and medication. When you combine them, because you don't necessarily want to end up living on psychotropic drugs for the rest of your life. So you still need to. It's like taking the Panadol to stop the headache, but we still need to find out if there's a brain tumor or if
Yes.
or what is causing the headache. If there's a migraine illness, a migraine, what it is happening under the surface to create the recurring headaches. So that's how the psychiatrists and psychologists work together
Yes.
in that sense.
Now, ladies, is there anything that we have not covered that you would want us to under our topic of suicide? Is there anything that we've missed?
I don't know if we missed anything, but I would really like to impress upon people that if you are having suicidal thoughts, to please seek out help, professional help. There are a number of mental health clinics scattered throughout the country. There are also a lot of private psychologists and psychiatrists that you can visit. Please seek help. And the thing is, a lot of people, when they feel like this, they feel like life is never going to improve. And they see the only way out as suiciding. But life can improve. And you just have to seek the help when you see the symptoms. And also for people not to stigmatize people with mental health disorders. Because anyone can get a mental health, any one of us in this room can get a mental health disorder any day. Do you know, Marsha, that if you get a traumatic blow to your head, you may start experiencing psychotic symptoms? Anyone can have it. It is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of.
Okay. And falling into your garden, Kelly, the EAP program that a lot of organizations offer, and when you look at it, it's really underutilized. And I mean, they always, they would promote the fact that it's private and confidential, and yet still people have problems going forward. And I have always been an advocate, just as we will go to get the hair done and the nails done and everything else, there's nothing wrong with going and, as I said, lie down on that couch and have that conversation with your counselor, your psychologist, and it's something that we need to change and really filter it into our culture. The brain, like any other part of our body, needs attention. It needs exercise, and I think we spoke about that in one of our programs. We need to exercise that brain, and just talk. It doesn't mean that I'm crazy, but you know what, let me just go and make sure that everything is okay and the wires are still neurologically in place.
And the thing is, like a lot of us, we want to think that we have to be perfect, but we are all flawed. No one is perfect. Once you're on earth, you're going to have problems. So there's no shame in admitting that you're having issues in whatever area of your life, whether it's relationship problems, financial problems. Everyone goes through it. Please seek the help. Things can get better.
The shame is in stigmatizing people who do, because none of us are exempt from having a bit of depression or anxiety or even a psychotic disorder. You can't really prevent that. Most of the times you really can't prevent it.
Exactly.
Most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the times you can't. So.
But it's interesting as well, because the way the society views an individual or a particular problem, for example, in some societies, people exhibiting psychotic illness, they are treated as shamans and as wise people. The communities embrace them, and their outcomes, their treatment outcomes, are much more positive than in a society that stigmatizes.
Support.
Exactly. So it's all a web, and we have to support one another.
And that started in the UK, decades ago, whereby somebody, when we didn't understand what we were seeing, when we saw a psychotic disorder displayed, locked them away in what they call asylums, where nobody could go to because you don't know, they might be witches or but now, funny enough, now in the UK and the US, going to therapy, it's like the thing to do. It's like having a Gucci bag. Have a therapist and a Gucci bag today, and you understand. So we really need to come away from those old ideas. And one thing we didn't mention when we were mentioning places to get help were hotlines. There are hotlines, chats on their suicide websites that have chats, and those are also places to seek help.
Okay. And I'll take the numbers from you, and in subsequent programs, we'll try to make it, a little part of it where we give out these important numbers so people know where to get help 4 different things. One of the key things that came out of this last part of the discussion here was when Casswina raised the point that almost anything can catapult you into some sort of a mental problem. And I mean, you're perfectly fine, and guess what? You had a miscarriage, the loss of a child, your spouse, a parent that you might have been so dependent on, a close friend, you know, something you were passed over for a promotion at work, and anything can trigger, particularly. And you raised the point as well that you might have even gone through something as a child or in some other part of your life, and you would be the better person to explain it. But I know over the years we've also come across that fact that says that, you know, the brain has a way of protecting itself and it would lock away things, and sometimes something may happen way into the future that is the trigger that will then make that trauma manifest itself, and then you have a whole other kettle of fish there again, you know. So my final question, and probably just one more call if we can, 652-4901 or 178-629-22784. God, I think my question just went off my head there.
It happens.
Bring it back out because I went to those numbers. I can't remember it now, but I do have a question for you off air. But at this point in time, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to give your closing statements. And just to let you all know again, Kelly McFarlane, she's a clinical psychologist and an organizational psychologist. And Casswina Donald, she's a cognitive neuroscientist and a psychiatric researcher. Okay, so closing statement, ladies.
Well, closing statement again is to take good care of yourself. There is no resource, there is no possession more valuable than your mental health, than your mind, even your physical health, because just take good care of yourself, invest in yourself, invest in your mental, in your psychological health always.
And I'd like to appeal to societies and communities to embrace their vulnerable populations. Please do not stigmatize people who are experiencing a mental health challenge. They are part of our communities. They are our brothers and sisters. Let us support them and not bring them down. Let us always uplift and not drag down.
Thank you so very much. We have touched one person out there, but then we have touched a lot. Okay, so I just want to say thank you to both of you for joining us, and again, the invitation is always open for you to join us here in the ladies' room. And I always enjoy this
for having
panel.
us.
Yes,
Again, ladies in the ladies' room. So thank you guys so very much, and I say thank you to all of you for listening and those who called in. Shoutbox, I can't see you, so I'll check it afterwards, and I do hope that you enjoyed this evening's program. Mr. T, thank you for holding down the fort for Aaron, and hopefully, Aaron, we do wish you a speedy recovery, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So from all of us in the ladies' room, we say thank you and good night.
Check out The Ladies' Room every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on the True Nation Station 90.1 FM. Great talk, great topics, great interviews for the whole family with your host Marsha. So make sure and tune in Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. only on 90.1 FM.
How many culture stations are there? Only one. WAC 90.1 FM.
Calypso and Steve, that is the culture of Trinidad.